Lisa was one thing where I thought, I'm not going to be able to get through this. And then realizing that I have a son that needs me. So, as a mom.
Decades have passed, yet Priscilla Presley still carries secrets heavy enough to shatter the glittering image of the Presley dynasty. She watched her daughter tie the knot 4 times. Keough, Michael Jackson, Nicolas Cage, and Michael Lockwood. Names that drew headlines across the world. Yet behind the scenes, Priscilla saw those marriages in a far darker light. She disapproved of some, doubted others, and in one case, her refusal to stand by Lisa Marie would fracture their bond forever. What she has finally confessed about those years is chilling, and it leaves the Presley legacy under a shadow the public never imagined. Inside the Presley family. The Presley name is one of the most famous in the world. It's a family that has lived under the brightest spotlight imaginable. Yet behind the music, the wealth, and the endless headlines, there have always been shadows. Tragedy after tragedy followed this family, and now, with Lisa Marie Presley gone, her mother Priscilla has finally broken her silence about Lisa's marriages and the betrayals her daughter endured. The Presley family's story began back in 1959, when Priscilla, who was 14 at the time, crossed paths with Elvis Presley in Germany, where he was stationed with the United States Army. Elvis was already a global superstar, adored by millions, and Priscilla was suddenly swept into his world. The age gap raised eyebrows later, but at the time the attention of the most famous man on earth was intoxicating. What followed was years of carefully managed visits, phone calls, and long-distance romance that eventually led to a wedding everyone was waiting for. On May 1, 1967, the king of rock and roll married Priscilla in Las Vegas. To the public, it looked like the ultimate fairy tale. The world's biggest star marrying the girl who had stolen his heart. But inside the walls of Graceland, life was very different. Priscilla was expected to live a very controlled existence. She was told how to dress, how to act, and even how to style her hair. Every detail of her appearance had to be flawless, and she was kept isolated from much of the outside world. Not long after the wedding, Priscilla discovered she was pregnant. At first, there were doubts, especially because Elvis worried about the timing and whether they were ready. But those fears faded the moment their daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, entered the world. Born on February 1, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, Lisa became the center of their universe. No matter how complicated their relationship was, both parents adored her. Still, cracks in their marriage kept getting wider. Elvis struggled with infidelity, and his emotional distance often left Priscilla feeling alone. And by 1972, she made the heartbreaking choice to leave him, taking Lisa Marie with her. While their divorce was finalized the following year, they never truly cut each other off. Elvis and Priscilla still shared a bond that revolved around Lisa. Childhood was anything but ordinary for Lisa Marie. She split her time between the magical yet chaotic world of Graceland and her mother's quieter life in Los Angeles. On one side was fame, fortune, and the never-ending circus of being Elvis Presley's daughter. On the other was her mother trying to create some normalcy. This constant back and forth created a sense of instability that only worsened when tragedy struck. At just 9 years old, Lisa Marie faced the unimaginable, the death of her father in 1977. While the world mourned Elvis as an icon, for Lisa, it was personal. Losing her dad at such a young age left scars that never truly healed. The trauma shaped her entire life, and although Priscilla tried her best to protect her daughter, she couldn't take away that pain. As she tried to raise Lisa, Priscilla also moved forward with her own life. She entered into a relationship with Marco Garibaldi, and together they had a son, Navarone Garibaldi. But even as she built a new family, Priscilla struggled with how to help Lisa find stability. In an effort to give her daughter direction, Priscilla introduced Lisa to Scientology. At the time, she believed it could help Lisa cope with grief and provide structure. However, later she admitted that she had been naive about the organization's deeper influence. What was meant to be a lifeline suddenly became another weight on Lisa's shoulders. Growing up as Elvis Presley's only daughter meant Lisa Marie could never escape the spotlight. The world expected her to be both a reflection of her father and her own person, a nearly impossible balance to strike. She had money, fame, and the Presley name, but what she didn't have was stability. This never-ending quest for stability shaped how Lisa would approach love as an adult. She longed for the kind of stability she never had, but what she found instead was a string of relationships that left her hurt, betrayed, and searching for something she never quite found. Looking back, Priscilla has admitted just how hard it was to watch her daughter navigate that storm. Some of Lisa's marriages shocked the world, others ended in heartbreak, and one in particular left scars deeper than anyone realized. And now, Priscilla Presley is finally opening up about how she truly felt about those marriages and the betrayal her daughter endured in silence. Lisa Marie's turbulent life. Lisa Marie Presley was born into unimaginable fame, but from the very beginning, her life was far from stable. Being the only daughter of Elvis and Priscilla meant she carried the Presley name, but also the heavy weight of expectation. That pressure, combined with personal struggles, would push her down a turbulent path marked by addiction, heartbreak, and loss. By her teenage years, Lisa was already battling demons. She began indulging in various substances and eventually entered rehab at Scientology's Celebrity Center at just 17 years old. Rehab at that age was shocking to many, but it marked the beginning of a lifelong battle with dependency and addiction. At the same time, she dropped out of high school, struggling with identity issues and depression that would haunt her for decades. Her father's fame had given her visibility, but it also made her mistakes and pain impossible to hide. Despite her turmoil, Lisa Marie wasn't without talent of her own. She stepped into the world of music, carving out a career that allowed her to express what words often couldn't. Her first album, To Whom It May Concern, in 2003, introduced listeners to a raw, confessional side of her personality. It was followed by Now What in 2005 and later Storm and Grace in 2012. Each project carried echoes of her struggles, her resilience, and her desire to be seen as more than Elvis's daughter. Through her lyrics, she laid bare her inner world, including the pain, rebellion, longing, and survival. But away from the stage, her personal life continued to spiral. One of the greatest tragedies she endured was the loss of her only son, Benjamin Keough. In 2020, Benjamin died under tragic circumstances at the age of 27. Lisa's grief was overwhelming. Family and friends said she never truly recovered from the heartbreak. As a matter of fact, Priscilla later revealed that it felt as if Lisa's heart stopped beating that very day. Almost immediately, those who knew her best saw her retreat further into sorrow. But her family life was complicated long before Benjamin's death and marked by a series of marriages that often made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Her first marriage was to musician Keough in 1988, when she was just 20 years old, and together they had 2 children, Riley and Benjamin Keough. Their marriage ended in divorce in 1994, but Danny never left her life. He remained close to Lisa, even serving as the best man at her later wedding to Michael Lockwood. In many ways, Danny was her most constant supporter, quietly standing by her even when the rest of the world fell away. Soon after her split from Danny, Lisa shocked the world by marrying Michael Jackson in 1994. The King of Rock and Roll's daughter and the King of Pop together were a union that dominated global headlines. Their relationship was intense, bizarre, and endlessly scrutinized. While the marriage only lasted 2 years, it left a lasting mark on Lisa, and it's one Priscilla has recently opened up about in a way that changes everything. After Michael, Lisa tried again with Nicolas Cage in 2002. Cage was a lifelong Elvis fan, making their whirlwind romance feel almost surreal to the public. But passion quickly gave way to volatility. The marriage lasted just over 100 days, ending in 2004, and even Priscilla admitted watching it unfold felt like witnessing a dramatic soap opera. She said, "They screamed and yelled, they threw things, and sometimes they broke things, they broke up. And the next day, or pretty close to it, they made up. Lisa and Nick broke up and made up so many times it was dizzying. When it was good, it was very, very good. And when it was bad, it was horrid." But Lisa's longest relationship came in 2006, when she married musician Michael Lockwood. Together they had twin daughters, Harper and Finley. For a time, it looked like Lisa might finally have the stability she craved. But as the years went on, cracks appeared. Their divorce in 2021 was bitter and dragged into court battles that left Lisa emotionally exhausted. Through all these ups and downs, Lisa never seemed to escape the turbulence that had followed her since childhood. She loved deeply, she fought hard for her independence, and she searched endlessly for the kind of peace her parents never had. But peace rarely came. On January 12, 2023, Lisa Marie Presley's story came to a heartbreaking end. She died at the age of 54 from a small bowel obstruction caused by complications from bariatric surgery. Her death shocked the world, not just because she was still so young, but because it came only 2 days after her final public appearance. At the Golden Globe Awards, where Elvis, the biopic about her father, was being honored, Lisa looked fragile. Priscilla later admitted she sensed something was wrong that night, saying her daughter seemed a little out of it. Just hours later, Lisa collapsed, and the Presley family was struck by another tragedy it was never prepared for. Lisa's life was filled with love, pain, resilience, and loss. She carried the Presley name with pride, but also with a heaviness few could understand. Her marriages reflected both her longing for stability and the chaos she could never escape. And among them, one relationship still stands out as the most shocking, the most controversial, and the one that Priscilla Presley herself is now finally speaking about: the Michael Jackson divorce. Lisa Marie Presley had already shocked the world with her personal life before, but nothing compared to the headlines that exploded in 1994. Just 3 weeks after finalizing her divorce from Keough, the quiet and dependable man who had been her first love, she walked down a very different aisle. This time it was into the arms of the most famous pop star on earth, Michael Jackson. The news sent shockwaves everywhere. Fans were stunned. The media went into a frenzy. And within the Presley family, no one was more unsettled than Priscilla. To her, it wasn't just a whirlwind marriage, it was something that set off every alarm she had as a mother. She had lived through fame at its highest and lowest. She had seen how celebrity could consume people, and she didn't trust what she was seeing unfold between her daughter and Jackson. Privately, Priscilla was deeply disturbed by the timing. Lisa Marie had barely stepped out of one marriage before she was thrust into another, and not just with anyone, but with a man whose name was dominating headlines for all the wrong reasons. Michael Jackson's career was staggering under the weight of allegations and controversy, and Priscilla believed her daughter was being swept up into something that wasn't about love at all. From her perspective, Jackson wasn't marrying Lisa Marie the woman, he was marrying the Presley dynasty. The name, the legacy, and the cultural weight of Elvis's only child. It felt less like a romance and more like a transaction that connected the king of pop with the king of rock and roll in the public's imagination. The spectacle made sense for Michael's image, but it left Priscilla worried her daughter was being used. During the marriage, Priscilla's own encounters with Jackson did little to ease her concerns. Their interactions were brief, strained, and often awkward. At one dinner party, she noticed how Jackson avoided adult conversation entirely, choosing instead to play with children while ignoring the adults around him. On another occasion, at an Elvis tribute event, they exchanged only a few polite words before slipping back into silence. These moments made Priscilla worried that Jackson had no genuine interest in building a relationship with her or with the Presley family as a whole. To Priscilla, it seemed like Jackson had built a wall between himself and anyone who might question his motives. And she had plenty of questions. Why was he suddenly so eager to have children? And most importantly, was her daughter truly happy or just caught up in something far bigger than she could control? Priscilla also believed Jackson was carefully calculating the timing of his marriage to Lisa Marie. His reputation had been badly damaged by terrible allegations, and marrying Elvis Presley's daughter suddenly changed the narrative. The public image shifted from scandal to spectacle. Tabloids now focused on the bizarre and glamorous pairing rather than the accusations. To Priscilla, it was obvious Jackson had gained a shield, while Lisa Marie had inherited the burden of defending a man whose world was already under fire. Behind closed doors, tensions simmered. Lisa Marie defended her husband, but cracks began to show quickly. Priscilla watched with frustration as her daughter was drawn deeper into the chaos surrounding Jackson. She worried about the pressure on Lisa, who was already struggling with her own identity, carrying her father's shadow while battling her own demons. The idea that Michael was layering even more pressure on her felt manipulative. As the months went by, the marriage became increasingly difficult to sustain. Public appearances were scrutinized, and every smile, every kiss, and every gesture between them was dissected by millions. Lisa Marie, who had already grown up under suffocating attention, was now living through it all over again on an even bigger stage. By 1996, Lisa Marie made the decision to file for divorce. To the outside world, the relationship had been short-lived but unforgettable. But for Priscilla, the end of the marriage felt like relief. She believed her daughter had finally broken free of something that had never been healthy to begin with. It wasn't just about Michael. It was about what Lisa had risked by attaching herself to him. By marrying Michael, she had tied herself to another cultural icon with demons of his own, and Priscilla worried she would lose herself completely in his shadow. The divorce brought no neat resolution. The Presley family remained wary of Michael, and Lisa Marie carried the scars of the whirlwind union long after it ended. The relationship had been passionate, chaotic, and dramatic, but it had also been short, and in Priscilla's eyes, it had nearly consumed her daughter in the process. And while this chapter ended, Lisa Marie's search for stability didn't. In fact, the years that followed would see her dive into yet another marriage, which would last far longer but bring its own share of heartbreak. Michael Jackson had been the spectacle. Nicolas Cage had been the whirlwind. But Michael Lockwood would become something else entirely. The man tied to Lisa Marie through children, through love, and eventually through bitter conflict, the betrayal Lisa never forgave. After Michael Jackson and Nicolas Cage, Lisa Marie truly believed Michael Lockwood might finally be the answer to her search for stability. He was a guitarist and music producer, someone who seemed grounded compared to the circus she had known in her other relationships. With him, Lisa Marie had her twins, Harper and Finley, and for a while she tried to build the quiet family life she had always longed for. But by the time their marriage collapsed in 2016, any illusions of peace had been shattered. What followed wasn't just another celebrity divorce, it was a war. And at the center of that war was a fracture so deep it would change Lisa Marie's relationship with her mother forever. When Lisa filed for divorce, the legal battle escalated quickly. She accused Lockwood of behavior that went far beyond the usual fights over money and custody. The allegations were explosive, and claims of inappropriate misconduct and maltreatment cast a dark shadow over every courtroom exchange. Lisa Marie, already fragile and exhausted from years of personal struggles, was convinced that protecting her daughters meant cutting Lockwood out completely. And this is where Priscilla was pulled into the storm. Lisa turned to her mother not just for emotional support, but for something much heavier: legal reinforcement. She wanted Priscilla to sign a deposition backing her accusations against Lockwood. To Lisa, it was a matter of loyalty, of family standing together against a man she claimed had caused irreparable harm. But for Priscilla, the request was impossible. She had never witnessed the behavior Lisa described and had never seen Lockwood act inappropriately toward the children. Signing the deposition, in her eyes, meant declaring something under oath that she could not honestly confirm. It wasn't about doubting her daughter's pain. It was about refusing to put her name to something she hadn't seen with her own eyes. That decision split mother and daughter in a way that neither could repair. Lisa Marie saw her refusal as betrayal. At a moment when she felt she was fighting for her children's safety, the one person she believed would stand beside her had stepped back. For Lisa, it was a wound that cut deeper than the divorce itself. From then on, their relationship changed. They were still mother and daughter, still tied by blood, history, and loss, but there was a fracture that never healed. Every interaction carried the shadow of that moment. Priscilla eventually confessed, "I knew with a stab to my heart that she would never completely forgive me." And she never did. "I didn't know yet that I would soon lose her permanently. The events poisoning our lives would prove fatal." For Priscilla, the choice had been agonizing. She knew the cost of standing her ground. She feared that Lisa would cut her off completely, that she would lose her daughter as well as her grandchildren. But she also knew she couldn't go against her conscience. She had spent decades navigating the weight of the Presley name, learning the hard way how truth and perception often collided, and she couldn't bring herself to lie under oath no matter the reason. In the end, the courts did not remove Lockwood from the twins' lives. He was awarded visitation rights, ensuring that Harper and Finley would continue to have a relationship with their father, despite the bitter accusations. To Lisa, this felt like another loss. Not only had she been forced to share custody, but she had also been left with the ache of knowing her mother hadn't backed her in the way she wanted most. The betrayal became one of the most painful chapters in both of their lives. It confirmed a deep loneliness that Lisa had felt for years, and the feeling that no matter how much she pleaded, no one could fully understand the battles she fought. Priscilla, on the other hand, experienced agony, knowing that her daughter's love had cooled and that the bond between them was no longer unshakable. As the years passed, the rift remained. Even as they shared moments of family unity, especially around the children, the undercurrent of betrayal lingered. Lisa never fully forgave her mother. She carried that disappointment with her until the very end of her life. And Priscilla carried the weight of knowing that, despite everything she had endured to protect her family, this was the one decision her daughter could never accept. When Lisa Marie died in January 2023, the world mourned Elvis's only child, a woman who had lived under crushing expectations and personal demons. But for Priscilla, grief came with another layer of sorrow. The knowledge that her daughter had passed away still holding on to a wound she had never healed. The betrayal, as Lisa saw it, remained until the very end. For Priscilla, that chapter would later become one of the most painful to revisit. In her memoir, she laid bare the torment of that choice, the cost of her refusal, and the lifelong scar it left on her bond with Lisa. But what she revealed in the pages of her memoir wasn't just a story about Lisa, it was a story about the dark side of the Presley family. It revealed her own inner world, her regrets, her secrets, and the parts of her life the public had never truly seen. What the memoir revealed. When Priscilla Presley finally put her memories into words, it wasn't just another celebrity book, it was a confession, a reckoning, and a way of preserving the pieces of a family story that had been shattered by fame, tragedy, and loss. The memoir is a love letter, a lament, and at times, a haunting goodbye. One of the most heartbreaking revelations comes from the final moments of Lisa Marie's life. Priscilla described the scene in that hospital room, faced with the decision no mother should ever have to make. Doctors laid out the grim truth. Machines were keeping Lisa alive, but her body was failing. Priscilla asked the most devastating question of all: what kind of life would her daughter have if they continued? The answer was simple and crushing: no quality of life at all. With that, Priscilla gave her permission to let go. It was the ultimate act of love and the deepest wound she would ever carry. But in her heart, Priscilla believes Lisa's spirit had left long before that day. She traces it back to 2020 when Lisa's son, Benjamin Keough, passed away under tragic circumstances. That moment, Priscilla says, was when Lisa's heart stopped truly beating. From then on, she was present but broken. The light that had once driven her music, her laughter, and even her fiery arguments seemed to dim. By the time Lisa collapsed in 2023, Priscilla already knew the loss had begun years earlier. The memoir also pulls back the curtain on Lisa's personality. Priscilla doesn't romanticize her daughter. She calls her wild, rebellious, and passionate, a child who carried the Presley name like both a crown and a weapon. Lisa could be fiercely protective, but she was also defiant. She challenged her mother at every turn, resisted rules, and demanded independence long before she was ready for it. Raising her wasn't simple. It was like trying to contain a storm. Still, there were moments of pure joy. One memory Priscilla shares captures Lisa at just 9 years old, strutting with a sense of pride few children could muster. Priscilla revealed that Lisa was always proud of being Elvis Presley's daughter, and that boldness never really left her. Even as she wrestled with heartbreak, addiction, and betrayal, Lisa always carried herself with the unmistakable swagger of her father's bloodline. But the Presley name was also a source of conflict. In 2005, Lisa made a decision that stunned her mother and the rest of the family. She sold 85% of Elvis Presley Enterprises, including rights to Graceland. For Lisa, it was a financial move, a way to gain stability after years of turmoil. But for Priscilla, it was a devastating compromise of the family legacy she had fought so hard to protect. She was left heartbroken, convinced that a piece of Elvis's world had been given away forever. Even in her memoir, decades after Elvis's death, Priscilla made it clear that her connection to him never truly ended. She still wears the diamond cross he once gave her, a reminder of the rare and extraordinary love they shared. She admits she never found anything like it again, no matter how many years passed or how many relationships came after. Elvis wasn't just her husband or a cultural icon. He was the great love of her life and the person who shaped her story in ways no one else ever could. Her memoir, titled Softly as I Leave You, Life After Elvis, is a tribute to love in its most complicated form. Love for a man who became a myth, love for a daughter whose fire was both beautiful and destructive, and love for a family legacy that continues to cast a shadow over American culture. Perhaps the most haunting and comforting part of the book is when Priscilla confesses she hopes Lisa Marie, wherever she may be, is not alone. She imagines herself reunited with Benjamin, her beloved boy, and with Elvis, the father who defined her, in a place where the pain of their earthly struggles fades and is replaced by a family whole again and free from the weight of grief, addiction, and betrayal. Through her words, the Presley legacy lives on in the raw honesty of a mother who lost everything and found the strength to keep going. What do you think about Lisa Marie's love life? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you love juicy deep dives into celebrity lives, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new video.